Happy holiday, happy holiday, while the merry bells keep ringing. Happy holiday to you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 48. Happy
Yes.
Saturday night, happy weekend. We had a very productive day.
We did have a productive
We've
day.
been nonstop pretty much all day,
That's
I want to
also
say. We got our Christmas tree today, and as you saw in the beginning, it's already up. We decorated it. It was pouring rain for the last 24 hours, so we weren't sure whether it was the weather was gonna cooperate, but when we went, it was actually not bad. So
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad at all. And it wasn't cold. We were also supposed to get some snow, and that didn't materialize.
And the tree lot is like 4 blocks from our house, so
We drove, though, so
We
we didn't
drove.
have to carry the tree back.
that was heavy. It was the heaviest tree.
It's far and away the biggest tree we've ever gotten.
It's definitely the biggest tree we've ever gotten.
It's not necessarily, well, it might be the tallest, but it's not, it's about 8 feet. But
It's wide.
It's wide, and the trunk is solid and heavy.
Yeah.
But it might be the nicest tree we've ever gotten.
We agree. Yeah, I have to 100% agree. It's the nicest tree we've gotten.
The only downside is that because it's such a big tree, I don't think we have enough lights or ornaments. And I'm not like necessarily an excessive light person, but the more lights you have, the easier it is to have them kind of like balance out. If you don't have enough, then they always end up sort of like bunched up on one side, and then there's a big, kind of like empty space over here.
And because it was so big, it was like not a lot of space behind it, so it was
Right.
kind of hard to like bring it around, kind of thing.
So we thought we would talk about Christmas tree buying and decorating traditions.
So one fun fact about us is we have always gotten a real tree. So your family growing up always got a real tree. You never had enough artificial.
Oh, no, we always had a real tree.
Yeah, same with my family. So we never had and I think that's kind of like since I grew up with that, I love the feeling of having just a real tree in our house, which is fun.
Yeah, I definitely prefer them. And I think my father would never have tolerated an artificial tree in our house. He was very, very particular about the Christmas tree. He had a whole long, drawn-out process of going to the lot. It was a little bit like Christmas Story, where he has to haggle with the owner of the lot. But that is true. In the old days,
You could.
It was like buying a car. You went and negotiated the price.
Take it for $5 less.
Yeah, I'm not paying $20 for. Actually, they probably weren't $20 back then. They were
Right.
paying cheaper. But yeah, it was a whole process. We would go, and in my family, there's so many kids. We couldn't all go, but a lot of us would go, depending on who was around, who was home, who was away for school, and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a long, long process, and it always seemed to be bitter cold too.
Oh yeah. I can remember being out there and just being like, just pick it because I want to get back home and decorate it.
Oh man, but it was an involved thing.
Yeah. For the last few years, we've gotten it from a tree farm that was located in another direction by our house, but there's construction there, so the lot that they was not available.
Well, it was a lot, not a tree farm. The trees came from the farm.
Yes.
We didn't go to the tree farm.
Correct. Yeah.
I've done that before to cut down a tree.
I have when I was little, but we haven't done that.
Yeah.
But so we were wondering like where we're going to get a tree this year because that lot is now just vacant, or they're going to build something, but there's no trees. So we drove by and then found out that it was actually in the parking lot of our local pool.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun.
It's kind of an unusual thing, although it was sort of convenient because the trees were on either side. You could drive in the parking lot.
Yeah,
Pick
park,
out your
get your
tree.
tree, and then come back around
right.
and put it on your car, and then you're done.
Right.
For many years, we got our tree from a tree lot that all the trees, no matter what size it was, $29.
Yeah. And they were nice enough. I mean, and they also, I think, came from Michigan too, as a matter of fact. But, I mean, I hate to be like that, but you do kind of get what you pay for. And so it was great. And especially, when we didn't have all that much money to toss around at Christmas time, it was nice to not have to spend a lot of money. But it was right by the Portillo's.
And Walmart.
Yeah. If you don't know, Portillo's is a very, very famous hot dog stand. Well, it's really much more than a hot dog stand.
Yeah.
But they're a very famous Chicago area. It's sort of fast food, but much better than fast food.
Been around for a really long time.
Yeah, they got their start as selling hot dogs, basically, but they sell a lot more variety of food now. It's actually really high quality.
And the one that's there, doesn't matter what time of day it is, there's always a line in the drive-thru, at least 10 cars deep.
Right, but
anytime.
But every year at Christmas, there's a family that comes down and sets up their tree lot right next door to the Portillo's, which at least they have a good, they have food nearby.
Yeah, so you got that going for you. Or a giant shake.
Or a giant shake. Like when I broke my jaw and you bought me a shake there.
Yeah.
That's a different story. We'll have to tell that story some other time.
Yeah, and that's when I bought the milkshake, and when I was in the drive-thru, I was pregnant with Emma, and the lady said, "How many cups?" I said, "I'll have a large chocolate milkshake," and she said, "How many cups do you want?" And I was just like, "None." I'm like, "Just what you give it to me," and it was like a big gulp size. I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Oh, that's why that's not for one person."
That was not when I broke my jaw. That was earlier in time.
Yes.
But so then we switched to this other place they're a little more pricey, but they're also a little more symmetrical.
And green, a lot of times you go in there just like, you could be like Christmas Story, where you knock it on the ground and like all the needles are on the ground.
Yeah.
But we love every year. We haven't actually built a lot on our ornament selection over the years, but we obviously have ones that the kids did when they handmade when they were small. We love putting those on the tree. We've got ones like the very first Christmas ornament I got you is on there. Ones that you got me.
Right.
There was a beautiful store in our town, Crescent Moon.
Right.
That was the name of it, right?
Yes.
And just beautiful handmade, just really ornate ornaments. So you'd give me ones of those every year, which I love.
And then we also have some that came from my mother, unfortunately, when she passed away. Ones that I bought her, and then ones that she had that we sort of divvied up among different family members.
And we have little tiny snow globes from your mom,
right.
too. We put those not on the tree because we don't want to get damaged. So they're like, I would call them antique snow globes. Yeah. Very ornate. So it's always fun every year just to like unpack and just see all the ornaments that you forgot about, and then the kids get excited when, even though they're adults now, they helped us tonight, which was so nice.
They did. The long drawn out part is always putting the lights on, and that always takes longer, but it's not like my dad had like a whole system. We had the big lights, the big Noma lights.
Oh wow.
And then that were in color. Everything was in color back in those days. In case you think everything was in black and white. No, but I mean they were colored lights. Right. And then we'd put those around first, and then we also had like little white Italian lights that we would also string. So that combination. Of course, back then there were not as many options for lights.
Yeah. Now there's just like so many different options.
I'm tempted to go find the giant ones, although
I would love to see those.
Yeah. Well, I mean giant. They're
just the bigger.
That. We have an ornament that's a glass ornament that's in the shape of one of those.
That I know the size you're talking about.
And they screwed in. They had little sockets you had to screw in. Kind of like a Christmas Story. But they always had the two sets of lights, and that was it. My dad was very particular about it. It took him forever. The whole process took forever because it wasn't just...
Was there swearing involved?
Not much, actually. Only sort of muttered on it. The swearing usually took place in the workshop in the basement or in the garage working on the car. That's where the swearing mostly took place. Not so much inside, like in the living room setting up the Christmas tree. But the thing is that like in the old days, there weren't very many varieties of Christmas tree stands.
Yes.
And they weren't always that, stable. If I remember correctly, it was almost sort of like a bowl shape, and the legs came up through around the edge. There were slots, and the legs came up through those slots. And then there was a ring that fit around the trunk of the tree. And you screwed in these sort of like eye hooks that
yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Went through the ring and through the legs of the stand. And they weren't necessarily all that stable. So there were many times when our Christmas tree was held in place by fishing wire,
Yep.
Attached to little hooks, and it was typically in a corner. So you'd have the stand, the tree, and then my dad would jerry rig this situation with fishing line that you couldn't really see.
No.
And he'd have hooks screwed into the wall on either side of the corner.
Because you don't want that tree to be on the ground when you wake up. That's
well,
the
and
worst.
we had a dog, and so we had two dogs at different times. The older dog we had, Heidi, she was a black lab mix, but she was not a very big dog. She was kind of like a medium sized dog, but she could still knock the tree over if she was curious about something. But then we had this gorgeous, really, really stupid collie. He was beautiful. He was wonderful. His name was Pepper. We didn't name him. We got him when he was already 2 years old, and the name had stuck. So we would have named him something different probably. But he was a beautiful dog and the kindest, sweetest dog ever. But he was dumb. And he could knock he was huge. And he could knock the tree over wagging his tail, just because he didn't know. So with the dogs in the house, you always had to have,
a plan.
Extra protection for the Christmas tree. It did fall over once or twice. But mostly my dad, even though he was a college professor, he was kind of like a engineer, carpenter, contractor, tinkerer. Yeah. He could do anything with tools. So we made sure that tree did not fall down.
Secure.
The poor dog. I'm telling tales about the dog, and he was the nicest dog of all time.
In my house growing up, my parents switched off decorating the tree. My mom had every single ornament from her birth all up to just thousands of them.
She probably still does.
She probably does. And my dad wanted more of a classic tree with just white lights, red bulbs. We did garland sometimes.
Red bulbs?
Yep.
Bulbs.
Bulbs, like red like ornaments.
Balls.
Yeah, balls, not bulbs.
Yeah. I was really confused. You said white lights and red bulbs. Could be.
Red ornaments, balls, and...
One of our kids used to refer to meatballs as meatballs.
Yes.
So I was a little confused. Maybe he put meatballs on the meatballs.
So I liked that tree because it was simple, and my dad always liked classic, just like no frills. So then it was like even more exciting getting those decorations out and the ornaments because he hadn't seen them in a couple of years. So that was always fun.
Then we also my dad had, this was before I was born. I mean, this might have been like their first Christmas or so. My dad made, it was like a barn for the nativity scene.
Wow.
And I mean, it wasn't overly complicated, but it had like this rough fancy roof, and it was open so you could obviously see inside, and they would put the figurines in there. And the big thing was, well, I may be confusing two different things because I'm getting old and senile, but if I remember correctly, they did not put the baby Jesus in there until after we went to bed on Christmas Eve, so we would wake up in there. But I might be confusing that with another. Yeah. Well, the story was that Santa Claus put Jesus in there. It was a nice story when you were a little kid. But we also, I might be confusing two stories because we also had this larger sort of like crib shaped. It was a wicker basket, but it had little legs. And the deal there was, no, this is actually not fun.
Okay.
This is nice. This is the opposite of Elf on the Shelf. And there's a lesson here, kids, because Elf on the Shelf is a narc. He's going to rat you out to Santa Claus, and we don't like that. But my parents sort of had the opposite thing where instead of having the Elf on the Shelf spy on you and rat you out to the cops, we had this little, like I said, it was kind of like a little cradle-shaped or a crib-shaped wicker basket, and they had straw to put in it. Uh-huh. And anytime you did anything, for somebody else, anytime you did somebody a favor, anytime you did an extra chore without being asked or whatever, you got to put straw in the thing. So it was the opposite.
So it was an incentive to do good, so that
it was a reward for doing good instead of someone spying on you. But then overnight they had a little bit larger baby Jesus who would go in that, and he would be there on Christmas morning.
That is so sweet. Yeah. I never knew that story.
My parents, let me tell you something. We'll tell some more stories about that as we get closer to Christmas. But Christmas was a big deal to my parents. Big deal. They were very sentimental about it, which was funny because, I mean, there wasn't time for sentimentality in our house.
Well, and especially, having 11 kids, it's like kind of
Right.
like that's a big deal to try to make it special for everybody.
But it was a big deal. But the Christmas tree was borderline. It was like a fiasco, but it was a fiasco that we always look forward to.
Right.
And it took forever. Oh, and then the worst thing, my older siblings, I think, loved this. I couldn't stand it. The stringing up cranberries and popcorn.
Oh, no.
What a nightmare.
Yeah, I've done that, and it's like you pop through the popcorn, your finger hurts holding the needle.
Yeah,
the
you got
popcorn breaks.
We'd literally take bowls of popcorn and uncooked,
Right.
raw cranberries,
Hard as a rock.
hard as a rock, and we would string, and you had to have a needle to push through
Yep.
the cranberries, and so you'd have like, I don't know, 8 or 9 kernels of popcorn and then a cranberry or whatever,
Right.
because the cranberries are really hard. But that popcorn would break when you were trying to get the needle through. I hated this process.
Yeah, I did that too, and I was like, this is not fun.
I'm sure it looked fantastic. I never could appreciate the look of it once we got it done.
And you're like, my fingers are all
Yeah, and you would inevitably puncture.
Yeah.
It was, and I think actually as I was getting to the point where I could manage this task, it was starting to fade. I don't think we did it all that often after a while. But I never liked it, and I'm sure it looked lovely, but to me it didn't because the process was such a drag.
Right. You're
And
like, no.
even when I was like too little to actually do it, it just took forever. And I don't know why, because it doesn't matter, but for some reason you want the process to be over. You want the tree to be up and decorated, and it would take forever.
Yeah, that's no fun.
But we always got our tree, so it's December 12th.
Today's my grandma's birthday, actually.
There you go.
She would have been 112.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right. As I said, my dad would have been, next year would be his 100th birthday. But we always got our tree on December 22nd because it was one of my sister's birthdays. And that was the thing. We had to get, and I don't know how I would have felt about that if I were in her situation. I think my parents thought it was like a special thing for her. But,
and she might have been like, this is my birthday.
well, I mean, it's kind of a neat celebration on your birthday,
gosh, yeah.
I guess. But I think the problem is if your birthday is that close to Christmas, then you're like, am I getting 50% of the presents on my birthday and
Right.
50% on Christmas?
Or do I get 100 and 100?
Right. Which was a legitimate concern in our house because, money was tight. But it was always December 22nd. And now that seems crazy to get it that close to Christmas.
Like, would there be anything available, kind of thing.
But that's what people did in the old days. I mean, the idea of putting your Christmas tree up Thanksgiving weekend, nobody did that.
Well, and especially if you do get a real tree. I mean, the further you get out, then it's obviously not going to last as long.
That was the other thing. We always had the humidifier going just to make sure the tree wasn't too dried out and brittle. Because that's the funny thing about, you're like, oh, let's go get our Christmas tree and we'll get it closer to the actual day so it'll last longer. They cut them down in like September.
Yeah.
So these trees have been
sometimes like
sitting
spray
around
painted.
for months. Yeah, this one, by the way, clearly is not.
No,
the one we got
it's
clearly
insane. Not. It's so pretty. We did good. You actually picked this tree out this year. You found.
Well, you pointed to one next to it, and I said, "What about this one?" And I think you actually made the call.
Yeah.
But the other thing we had that horrible metal tinsel.
Yes.
That it was like there was in our house. It was like garland versus tinsel. We didn't like the garland, the stringy stuff.
Right.
That I don't know. It just didn't seem Christmas.
It's all staticky and everything.
But we had tinsel that you put on the tree. It's supposed to look like icicles. Right. And it did. Once it was all up, it did kind of look nice as long as you didn't overdo it. But it was probably like lead or something. We probably all are going to die prematurely as a result of Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
As a result of this metal, some kind of metal tinsel that we would.
That just reminded me when we asked Claire to put candy canes on the Christmas tree when she was little, and she put them all on one branch.
Yeah.
They're just all lined up.
Oh yeah, there has to be something like that happens when your kids are little. And then eventually, probably because it was toxic, they stopped selling the metal tinsel and they made plastic tinsel that was supposed to, and it was sort of like Mylar, like really
It was.
thin Mylar strips, and that the static was ridiculous with that. You'd put it on the branch and it would go like that, because of the
It
static.
looks so pretty.
Yeah, yeah.
I did see a commercial. We saw a commercial where they have now artificial trees you can get in like pink and green and all those
they've
different
always had
rainbow
that sort of-
colors and everything like that.
And they also have the ones that have the lights pre-attached, so that they're all like evenly distributed.
Yeah.
That might look a little too perfect.
Yeah.
Like if they're perfectly evenly. I hate my brother-in-law Tom Bocci. I'm gonna tell. I am extraordinarily envious of his light skills.
Yeah, he puts them like deep in, like he like puts them like in the.
Well, they get a fresh tree. They go cut down the tree,
Right.
so that helps. They get a tree. I offhand, I'm not exactly sure the variety, but it has a little bit longer needles, but not real long needles, and they're kind of soft.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit lighter green. It's not a real intense like forest green kind of color. So it works really well with the lights. And he manages. It's almost like he strings them up the trunk and around. I don't know what he does.
It is. It's like a beautiful.
They're
like
perfectly
yeah.
embedded in the tree.
Yeah.
And I hate him for it. I don't really hate him for it. He was my confirmation sponsor when I was
Yeah,
in
and
8th
usually
grade.
that family hosts Christmas, so we will not be there this year, unfortunately.
That's true. But I'm still envious of his Christmas.
I think
light
it's
skills.
probably maybe not as fun taking it down, because you're just kind of have to be
That
just
is true.
intricate of like taking it
That
down
is
as you
true.
did. It's exciting putting it up, but taking it down, you're like, no.
That's the other thing. My dad was very, very, very. I was going to say fanatical. I don't really like the way that sounds, but he had a very distinct, very. He had a sort of a demanding way of taking the lights off the tree and bunching them and wrapping the cord around so they would be easy to.
So the next
string
year,
the next
you
year.
just gave yourself a gift by putting them away nicely
Yes.
so that you can bring them out
But
and
he
then put
was
them back
very,
on.
very, very precise about that. And we never took the tree down until the January 6th. Why January 6th?
Because of the.
It's the Feast of the Epiphany.
Yes.
It's when the wise men showed up. See, when you grow up Catholic, you have to know all these things.
I did not grow up Catholic.
Well, you're fortunate. No, I'm kidding. That's not true. We have many priests and nuns in the family. They're all lovely, lovely,
Lovely,
people.
lovely.
However, that was the thing. Because they call it Little Christmas, represents the day the wise men showed up. And my mother my parents they'd always put a little extra candy in our stocking that morning.
That's
So we'd still have
nice.
the stockings up. So yeah, Santa Claus came back, gave you a little more candy for the Feast of the Epiphany.
That's sweet.
So there you go.
So I hope you liked our beginning of our tree. We'll show more pictures and share more things as it gets closer.
And
to
we're not
Christmas
done
Eve.
talking about the holidays.
No.
We got lots more to come.
We do. But for now, we'll see you next time. Have a great night. Bye.